What's going on, AP Human Geography? It's Mr. Majewski. I wanted to go over a few of the development vocabulary terms because a few of you have had some questions about these. And so I wanted to go over some of the questions. In fact, I've highlighted the terms where people have asked me for specific questions, and I'm going to go through each of those really quickly. The highlighted ones are in red on the left-hand side of the screen. And then I have a little PowerPoint that I am also going to add to the haiku page, which we actually covered later in the year, but it hits on some of these models. Remember, I'm having you do all the models for development. I'm having you do all the terms for development now, even though we're only going to hit on about 3/4 of these now. But you're going to want to have these terms done for later in the year to reduce your workload. All right, so first off, core periphery model. The core, the periphery, and the semi-periphery. Hey, this is in your textbook. It is the exact same thing as number 21, the Wallerstein World System Theory. So, to be honest with you, you only have to do 22 terms because this is technically a duplicate. There are slight differences between the two, but for the time being, for now, we can just put them together. So if you did 21, Wallerstein's World Systems Theory, I'll put on your card or on your paper also the core periphery model, or also known as the core periphery model. So that right there is going to eliminate one of the terms for you, because if you've done 21, you've already technically done number 1 as well. All right, easy enough. Number 3. On your sheet, it was listed as Gender Development Index, GDI. Remember, we're now using GII in human geography. So number 3 ought to be Gender Inequality Index, GII, which obviously you should be well familiar with, and that should be an easy term for you to do. Number 4, instead of gross national product, GDP, gross domestic product, remember I asked you to change this to GNI, gross national income, and that again is in your notes and in the textbook, as is GNI per capita. So if there was any confusion with 3 and 4, there shouldn't be any longer, because again, these are terms that we were supposed to have changed, and these are terms that are very clear to us based on the notes and on the reading. Number 11, quaternary and quinary sectors or services. These are subcategories of tertiary sector. A quaternary job is a high-level professional job that usually requires a great deal of education because it's a type of job that is associated with research, development, science, or technology. So again, it's jobs that are generally associated with tech and technology and particularly scientific development and research. Why are these considered separate from other tertiary jobs? Because they oftentimes require higher levels of education. They're considered to be some of the supreme professional jobs or the highest professional jobs, therefore usually require more training, more education, and often these are the type of jobs we see in MDCs as opposed to large numbers in LDCs. Some examples of quaternary jobs would be things like a scientist, a researcher, all right? A computer programmer, all right? Even sometimes positions like lawyers or doctors, all right? Especially medical researchers as well, because again, those can sometimes be classified as higher professional jobs, so anything usually involving research, design, technology, and sometimes law as well is added into it. So those would all be good examples for you. Quinary jobs are the highest of the high, I guess you could say. These are the jobs that usually, there's very few of them in a society. They're, for instance, the heads of companies. They're political leaders or business leaders or information leaders. These are like CEOs of companies. And what their job is to make decisions that tend to affect a large portion of the rest of society. So these are individuals in high-powered positions, usually bosses or owners or the highest levels of management, and again, their job is to really make major decisions that affect a large number of employees and or a large number of people. Sometimes government officials, politicians are thrown into the quinary sector as well, just because their decisions may have a profound impact on the rest of society. So again, quaternary and quinary are just two subtypes of tertiary jobs. They're all providing services. It's just quaternary, usually professional services like research, design, science, medicine, and quinary jobs usually are upper level management, bosses, owners of companies, especially large corporations, maybe government officials who are making decisions that are affecting a large number of people as well. Okay? The dependency theory, let me go to that. I'm going to go to the little slide right here. Andre Frank's dependency theory, it's also something called neocolonialism. All right? The idea of the dependency theory is that there are some developing countries that actually, where the leaders, the people in charge, actually allow the country to remain poor. They kind of want it to be impoverished. They want it to be dependent on other countries around the world for assistance, for aid. Why would they want that? Because when they receive assistance or aid from the developed world, they are getting material wealth, they're getting money, they're getting supplies, they're getting resources. And what Andre Frank and dependency theorists believe is that these people want all of this assistance from the outside world to come into their country so they can get it, so they can hoard it, and they can have it for themselves. And so they keep their country poor so that the rest of the world really continues to provide them with material wealth, resources, and other assistance. And then the elites, the leadership in that country, kind of keep that mostly for themselves. They spread it around with each other, but they really prevent it from getting to the people who it was supposed to have helped, the poorer people in society. So it's a way for corrupt leaders in some LDCs to have a steady supply of supplies, wealth, and resources. But the only way they're going to continue to have that stream of resources is if they keep their country poor and dependent on the developed world, on the rest of the world, for products and supplies. Usually these are countries that are autocratic, that have a kind of a dictator or an abusive government in power. And North Korea is considered an example of that, where Kim Jong-il and now Kim Jong-un received a lot of aid from China and Russia and other countries. They live in palaces, for instance. They live in splendor. Meanwhile, their entire country, for the most part, lives in poverty and really struggles to survive on a daily basis. So it's a kind of negative view of governments and countries. And it makes sense because Andre Frank was kind of considered a socialist geographer. And so he's really criticizing what he considers to be kind of a capitalist system, and a system where the rich countries are helping the poor countries, but the money, the resources, the materials rarely get to the people that they need. All right, Ukraine was another example in recent times. Libya, you have these countries that are living in squalor. Look at North Korea at night. There's no electricity at all except for in the capital. Meanwhile, you look at some of the houses where Kim Jong-un is living in. Look at these palaces, right, that exist here, while the rest of his country really living in squalor. Dependency theorists argue a lot of leaders in LDCs do this intentionally so that they can continue to receive aid or assistance from the rest of the world in order to try to improve their country's development. But in reality, a lot of the times they just keep it for themselves. All right. And then the last one that folks asked about was Nolan's stages of growth. Look, all Nolan's stages of growth is, and you don't need to know the 6 stages right now, all you need to know with Nolan's stages of growth is that he measures the overall development of a country based on how well they use, adapt, and implement technology in their country. So basically what he says is, I can look at the amount of technology that a country has, their computer systems, the types of computers they have, the type of, the amount of data that they're able to store, the amount of computer programming or computer analysis that they're able to do. And he says he can determine their development level based on that. And what he says is a country is going to be in one of these 6 stages of technological growth. For instance, the United States would be in stage 6. Maybe some of the countries in sub-Saharan Africa would still be in stage 2, 1, 2, or 3. So his point is, instead of looking at, at the economy, I guess you could say, like Rostow does with his development model, you can look at technology in a country, and that might be a better way, Nolan thinks at least, to potentially look to determine the overall development of a place. All right, so I think an example for that might be, you could draw an image first off that involves technology, maybe getting better each step along the way. Or you could just talk about how the United States is fully technologically connected, right? We have a lot of internet users. We have a lot of computers. We have a lot of internet providers. We have infrastructure in place to allow, digital data to move around very quickly. All of these things are common in developed countries, less common in developing countries who are still moving up these various stages or steps up the ladder to full technological development. Anyways, I hope those help. And if you have any other questions, please let me know. All right, I am going to sign out here. Mr. M. Good luck on your vocab terms. Now there's only technically 22 to do, right? Because number 1 and number 21 are the same thing.